All right, let's dive into this explainer and clear up, honestly, a ton of the confusion surrounding the October 2026 NIOS exams. If you're a student gearing up for these exams, you have undoubtedly heard the term PCP classes floating around recently. The notifications are marked most urgent, but the actual details can feel incredibly vague. What exactly are they, and more importantly, do you really need to care? Let's get right into the facts. Now, you might be thinking, can skipping these PCP classes really cost me that heavily? The harsh reality? Absolutely. It is incredibly easy to just ignore a random notification on your dashboard, but brushing this one off could actually cost you big time. We are talking about losing crucial, super attainable marks that directly impact your final grade, or even worse, being forced to pay extra penalty fees out of your own pocket later on. No thanks, right? So we're going to break this down step by step so you know exactly how to handle this without any stress. Today we're covering what PCP classes actually are, the difference between theory and practical sessions, how the PCP grading system works, finding your study center, and finally, some pretty strict warnings issued to those centers. All right, Section 1. What are PCP classes? To actually demystify that most urgent April 27th notification, we first need to understand what PCP even stands for, Personal Contact Program. Since the National Institute of Open Schooling is, well, open schooling, you're not sitting in a regular classroom every day like traditional students. You submit online assignments, and eventually you take a final theory exam. But to bridge the gap between those steps, these PCP sessions are designed for you to clear up your doubts. They're formal, in-person sessions held at your designated study center where you can sit down face-to-face with a teacher and just ask questions about your theory and practical subjects. Moving right along to Section 2, Theory versus Practical Classes. Here's the thing, not all of these PCP classes carry the same weight. Knowing the difference is absolutely key to your success here. Take the theory classes, for instance. There are 30 of these sessions per subject, usually held on weekends, and they actually kicked off back on May 3rd. Now, these, entirely optional. If you want to go and clear your doubts, that's great. If not, no big deal. You won't be penalized. But on the flip side, look at the practical classes. There are only 5 sessions per subject. They start on August 1st, and they are absolutely 100% mandatory. Regardless of whether you have 2 practical subjects or 3, you've got to attend these 5 specific classes. So why the strict rules for these 5? Well, they're officially categorized by the board as your formative assessment, or FA. They aren't just there for casually asking what to write in a lab manual. They are a highly active, graded part of your curriculum. That is exactly why skipping them just isn't an option. Now, let's see how this all builds up your total grade. Alongside those 5 formative assessment classes in August, you also have what's called a summative assessment happening in September. Don't let the fancy term confuse you. It literally just means submitting your completed practical file. Together, the formative assessment classes and that summative assessment file make up your whole practical grade. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, the PCP grading system. Okay, so we know we have to show up, but how do these classes actually impact that final report card? Well, for subjects with practicals, there are 20 highly attainable marks up for grabs here. And guys, 20 marks is a massive chunk of your overall score. It can literally be the difference between passing and failing or bumping up an average result into an excellent one. The grading breakdown is an exact 50-50 split. 50% of the grade, so 10 marks, is awarded simply for attending those 5 PCP practical classes and getting your attendance marked. The remaining 50%, the other 10 marks, comes from submitting your practical file. That means half of your entire practical grade is secured just by showing up and making sure your name gets checked off the list. It's almost free marks. Let's look at a real-world example just to see the exact cost of missing this. Imagine a student taking both physics and biology. In physics, they attended the PCP classes and submitted their file, boom, scoring a perfect 20 out of 20. But in biology, they only submitted the file and completely blew off the PCP classes. Because of that, they scored a 0 for attendance, lost 10 massive marks, and ended up with just a 10 out of 20. They literally threw away half their practical grade simply because they skipped those 5 mandatory sessions. And honestly, the punishment for missing these classes doesn't even stop at lost marks. If you miss out, you won't just take a hit to your grade. The board will actually force you to pay a completely separate formative assessment exam fee later on just to make it up. And this isn't some hypothetical threat either. Students who took their exams back in April 2026 and missed their classes were forced to pay this exact fee. Talk about a double whammy. So how do we avoid all that? Let's jump to Section 4, Finding Your Study Center. To actively prevent losing marks and your hard-earned cash, you need to know exactly where to go. The process is super straightforward, but you do have to take the initiative here. Just follow these exact steps on the NIOS portal. Step 1. Search NIOS login on Google. Step 2. Log in using the reference number from your payment receipt and your date of birth, or you can just use your enrollment number if you have it handy. Step 3. Scroll all the way down to the bottom of your student dashboard. And Step 4. Click on the button that says PCP Hall Ticket. Once you click that, assuming your ticket is generated, it's going to display your specific study center address. Now, here is your game plan. Locate that exact address on your hall ticket. Next, you got to actually visit the center in person. And crucially, this is the most important part, formally request that they mark your attendance for the PCP classes. Don't just walk in and assume they know you're there. You have to make absolutely sure your attendance is officially logged.
Which leads us to Section 5, strict warnings for centers.
Now, what if you do everything perfectly right, but the study center itself tries to shake you down for money to attend? If they even try, keep this number in your head, 500 rupees. The NIOS board already pays these centers a dedicated fund of 500 rupees per student specifically to run these PCP classes. Everything was fully included in your initial admission fee. You do not owe the center a single extra rupee just to show up for your attendance. Period. And the board is taking this incredibly seriously. The NIOS Director of Student Support Services recently sent out a very strict official letter to all these centers. To quote it directly, centers failing to organize PCP classes or inform students will be marked inactive, funds stopped, and recognition canceled. The board is strictly monitoring their compliance. If a center tries to play games and deny you these mandatory classes, they are literally risking their official recognition and their funding. So at the end of the day, the ball is entirely in your court to secure those 20 marks. I want you to log into your portal right now. Is your PCP hall ticket showing an address or is it completely blank? Check it immediately. Ultimately, this system is designed to pass the students who actually show up. So the real question is, are you going to let a simple administrative oversight tank your grade, or are you going to take control of your education today? Go check that portal.